Rachel Smith. I work for the New Media Consortium, and I'm going to talk about visual recording on the iPad. I'm going to answer some questions that I typically get when I talk about this, including, am I crazy? What exactly am I talking about when I say visual recording and iPad in the same sentence? What kinds of tools there are available in case you wanted to do this yourself? If you decide to try it, what exactly do you need to know in order to do it? And finally, once you've done them, what about post-production? What do you do with the images after they're done? And I'll also talk about some goodies that you can do with your stuff after you've created it. So first of all, addressing the question of, am I crazy? No, I'm not crazy, although I am fearless when it comes to technology, and sometimes that can look like crazy, so I accept that. That's okay. Well, now that we've established that, what am I talking about when I say visual facilitation? Visual facilitation is the practice of facilitating groups using drawings, and usually this is done with large charts of paper on the wall, and as the group talks, the recorder or the facilitator writes down what they're saying on the charts. If the person is interacting with the group and helping to guide the conversation, that's called visual facilitation, and if they're simply taking notes and not really interacting with the group, then that's called visual recording. So what I'm talking about is doing visual recording on an iPad, using your finger or a stylus. The key difference between doing this on the iPad and doing it on the paper is that it's much harder to interact with the group when you're using the iPad. So if what you need to do is facilitate, it's going to be a lot trickier to do that using the iPad. Also, you don't get chalk on your fingers. That can be a plus, it can be a minus, depending on how you look at it. Visual recording on the iPad works best if you're an observer in the room, if you're not the facilitator, if you are listening to a keynote or a talk and you're recording that, it's really good for that. If you're recording a small group meeting, it's really good for that. So the kind of thing where something's happening in the room and you're sitting somewhere and you want to take notes about it, works really well for that. It works worst when you need to facilitate the group. It's just too difficult to concentrate on what you're doing on the iPad and concentrate on the conversation in the room. It's much easier to do if you're just using markers. If the whole group really needs to see what you're doing, then using the iPad is not generally the best solution. There are some exceptions that I'll talk about later. But generally, if what you want to get out of your meeting is for the group to see the chart unfold and to interact with it and respond to it, which is one of the key strengths of visual facilitation, then the iPad may not be the best solution. So let's take a look at some of the tools that are available. I'm going to talk about 4 of the many tools that are available. And by tools, I basically mean apps in the App Store. The first one I'm going to talk about is Ideas by Adobe. I'll talk about AirSketch by Grayon, Brushes by Taptricks, and Sketchbook Pro by Autodesk. Adobe Ideas is a free app, so the price is right. It has a pretty simple interface. The tools are all over on the side. Pluses are that it smooths lines as you work. You have a large canvas to work on. It's good for use with a stylus, and you have lots of colors to choose from. Deltas, or things that could be improved, are that it smooths lines as you work. The controls are tricky to use, and it's hard to make custom color palettes on the fly. I put smooth lines under both a plus and a delta because sometimes it's good to have your letters smoothed out, and sometimes it ends up with your letters not being what you thought they were. And it appears to have only 2 layers, one photo layer and one drawing layer. AirSketch by Grayon is $4.99 in the App Store, and it's really cool because what it lets you do is hook up wirelessly to a web browser or web browsers, as long as they're on the same network. So you can be drawing on your iPad and other people in the room can be watching you on their own screens or on a projector if you have a web browser on a computer hooked up to a projector. And as you draw, it just shows up on the web browser. It's that easy. It's wireless, and as long as they're on the same network, it just works. So that's really cool. You can also use it to annotate pictures. So you can load a picture into it, as you can in Ideas, and then you can draw on or write on the picture. The annotating pictures and the wireless connection to the browser so that the group can see are real pluses for this one. A delta is there doesn't appear to be any zoom, which makes it really difficult to write, and there are a limited number of brushes and palette options. I hope that they keep developing AirSketch because the fact that you can have it just appear on the browser is really, really good, and it's one of those exceptions that I mentioned to the times when this works worst, because if the whole group can actually see it develop on the projector, then that is really cool. Brushes is also $4.99. Brushes is a neat little app that can turn your drawings into a QuickTime movie. So as you draw, it records the strokes automatically. You don't even know that it's happening. And then you can play it back in Brushes, and in the Brushes application for Macintosh, you can play it back, but you can also export it to a QuickTime movie that anybody can see. It's very easy to use. It's easy to make custom color palettes and keep them going throughout your work. It has lots of layers. It can zoom. It has lots of levels of undo. You have lots of choices for brush size and shape, and it animates the drawing when you're done. Really cool. On the Delta side, there seems to be a fixed canvas size, which is the size of your iPad screen. And other than that, I really can't find a lot not to like about Brushes. And this drawing that I'm doing right now, I'm doing in Brushes, and you're watching it unfold with their animation. Sketchbook Pro by Autodesk is $7.99. It's a very powerful tool. It has lots of controls. There's a palette for the brushes, the layers, the colors. You can do lots of custom colors. You can save your own palettes. It has lots of levels of zoom, lots of layers you can add. You can customize the shortcut menu. The writing is very smooth and it looks good. On the Delta side, saving is a little bit clunky, but it's very essential. You can lose your work if the app crashes. It has a fixed canvas size, which is the size of your screen. There are lots of tools and options, which can be a plus, but also can be tricky to work with. And if you're using a stylus, the controls can be very awkward. They're very natural if you're using your finger, but if you're using a stylus, they can be kind of awkward. And Sketchbook Pro is the one that I've used the most so far, although having done this in Brushes, I could see using Brushes as well.
And I dot the I's and hope you will cross all the T's. Sharing our stories and daring to dream. If fortune favors the fire that burns inside.
Alright, so those tools look really cool. What do I need to know if I want to do this, or what do you need to know? You need a little bit of equipment. Obviously, you need the iPad and optionally a stylus. You'll want a power cord to charge up your iPad. You'll want a VGA dock adapter if you're going to project, unless you're using Brushes to project wirelessly. And you might want a USB camera connector if you're going to take photos on a digital camera and you want to include those in your drawings, then you might want to get the camera kit. A word about the power connector for the iPad. The battery on the iPad is amazing and it will last all day. I've recorded a full day conference, session after session after session, and ended up not running out of battery, but you will want to charge it up after that. And if you're doing a lot with some of the things that use up more of your battery, like if you're playing back your Brushes animations a lot, you're going to want to be able to plug it in and charge it up. The power cord is pretty short and it's difficult to try to record while you're plugged into the power cord, so you want to charge it when you're not actually recording. The space that you're in, you don't need a lot of space. This is a difference between iPad visual recording and graphic visual recording on charts. You just need a chair or a corner of the floor. I've done a lot of recordings in a full room where I just sat on the floor somewhere off to the side, and that worked really well. If you're using a desk, then you can try propping your iPad at a slight angle. I like to use my iPhone as something to prop it on. It works really well. And I have a non-slip case that hugs the back of my iPad, which makes it easier when I prop it on something because it doesn't slip around so much. Other considerations to take into account when you're doing this, it's a lot like street sketching. So if you set up an easel on the street, at first when you start, you get distracted by people coming by. They look over your shoulder, they ask you questions, but after a while you kind of forget that they're there and you get really into the work. And I find that that same thing happens when I do visual recording on the iPad. I found that one screen full is enough to record an hour of talk like a keynote, and it can be less or more depending on how fast the person's talking. It helps to outline words or areas first and then come in and fill in later. So you can see here I've kind of sketched out where I'm going to put those words, and then later when there's a pause I'll come and fill those in. And I like to keep my fingernails short so that I don't so they don't slip on the iPad. Remember to save your work as you go, and if you're nervous about doing your first one, then go to YouTube and you can listen to some talks there and practice that. Practice recording to those in private. All right, so let's say you do this and you've got some, then what do you do for post-production? This is so much easier than post-production for paper charts. So when I do post-production for paper charts, I take photographs of them and I clean up the photos in Photoshop and I stitch them together and I resize them. And they look really good, and then I make JPEGs of them, and then I can do whatever I want. That's really good. This one, with the iPad, as soon as I'm finished, I can email the images right away to myself or to the speaker or whoever. I don't have to clean it up because it's already white. There's no paper to drop out. And I can stitch them together in Photoshop if I have multiple screens and I need a longer one. Brushes can export to QuickTime Movie, like I said, so you can actually show someone the whole process. And Flickr and other goodies make it easy to share and store your images. Did I say goodies? Yes, I did. Remember this very simple formula. The iPad plus social media equals fun. If you have a Flickr account, you can email your images right to Flickr as soon as they're done. They're right up there. You can also email to Twitter. You can do that actually at the same time if you want. And you can immediately tweet that you've posted a drawing. If you use the hashtag for the event that you're in, then people who are watching Twitter for notices of that event will see it. And if you use the iPad hashtag, then people who are interested in the iPad will see it. If you make movies with brushes, you can put them on YouTube or on Vimeo. It's a lot of fun. So there are all kinds of things you can do with this. And that's a quick overview of visual recording on the iPad. I am Rachel Smith. I'm on Twitter as @Ninmah, Ninmah, and I'm also on Flickr by the same name. Thanks for listening.